This is a very deep crisis. This is a crisis that is about real interest, but it's also about identity, and it's about important political principles.
We have a European Union policy, which is a fair weather policy, and we were in 2015 in a perfect storm.
Je l'ai dit au Parlement luxembourgeois, la migration sera le point fort de notre présidence.
Chacun d'entre nous seul ne pourra pas régler cette question. C'est très difficile, la situation est très difficile. On espère bien qu'on finira avec le temps par trouver une solution.
In the spring of 2015, we saw that we had not just the Central Mediterranean route, but we also had the Eastern Mediterranean route, and suddenly it was clear that we would be facing a number of migrants which was absolutely unprecedented.
700 migrants, peut-être plus. Le pire drame de l'immigration en Méditerranée.
Una tragedia senza precedenti, a 60 miglia dalla costa.
I still remember that the accident weekend, we went to the ministers of foreign affairs and ministers of interior. One of the major points was actually the tripling of the amounts available for Frontex operations in order to move towards saving lives on the Central Mediterranean route.
Let me say that having 41 European Union ministers sitting together at the same table with less than 24 hours notice is not just a sign of goodwill, but also finally gives the idea of a new sense of urgency.
Depuis plusieurs mois, on sait que c'est un sujet majeur et que donc là on se dit, on l'a vu, c'est pas quelque chose qu'on découvre et on ne peut pas empêcher de tels drames, on ne peut pas empêcher de tels événements tragiques. Et là, c'est vraiment une prise de conscience que tout ce que l'on a dit, et l'on a dit beaucoup de choses, n'aboutit pas au résultat que nous attendons, c'est-à-dire éviter ces drames et contenir la pression migratoire.
Saving the lives of innocent people is, of course, the #1 priority for us. It will be a discussion about readiness to sacrifice some national interest for the common good. And this is always here the most challenging moment in our discussions.
La première décision qui est attendue, c'est de renforcer la présence de l'Europe en mer, mais également en surveillance.
Es geht hier die Akzeptanz der Europäischen Union, ihrer Werte weltweit. Und deshalb ist das Thema heute von allergrößter Wichtigkeit, gerade auch im Blick auf das Retten von Menschenleben.
I to jest moment, w którym Unia może pokazać swoją solidarność nie tylko w słowach, ale również w bardzo konkretnych czynach.
À partir de ce moment-là, on a sauvé davantage de personnes, ce qui est évidemment un objectif fondamental, mais on a vu également de plus en plus de personnes arriver. Les routes ont changé, puisqu'on est passé de la Méditerranée centrale à la partie davantage à l'est.
It started out being about saving lives. Next, it became a matter of how do we do with the people who actually stay on European territory? How do we redistribute them among member states?
I remember the discussion in Coreper when I said to the ambassadors, yes, we will save these people, but now then we need to know what we do with them.
La règle qui s'applique, c'est que le pays auprès duquel des migrants arrivent est responsable du traitement des demandes d'asile. Mais lorsque l'on a des milliers de migrants, on voit bien le poids énorme que ça peut représenter pour les pays de première entrée. Donc, l'idée est assez rapidement venue de se partager cette responsabilité.
We already in mid-May said that we would propose a relocation scheme, and then we had a rather difficult discussion between member states because there was this feeling that these measures should be decided on a voluntary basis. And so we had the camps voluntary versus mandatory.
Il y a des histoires différentes dans nos États membres. Dans les pays de l'Est de l'Europe, il n'y a pas de grande tradition récente, en tout cas d'immigration importante. Cette ouverture n'est pas quelque chose de naturel et de spontané.
Réellement, les pays de l'Est ont des sociétés plus homogènes. Il y a une
What did I just do? Oh.
Mandatory.
Il y a des histoires différentes dans nos États membres. Dans les pays de l'Est de l'Europe, il n'y a pas de grande tradition récente, en tout cas d'immigration importante. Cette ouverture n'est pas quelque chose de naturel et de spontané.
Réellement, les pays de l'Est ont des sociétés plus homogènes. Il y a une crainte, une peur du différent.
Povinné kvóty nebudú. Zopakujem to ešte raz, povinné kvóty nebudú. Nikto nemôže povedať ani Českej republike, ani Slovenskej republike, toľko to musíte teraz migrantov zobrať v takejto a takejto kvalite.
We would like to be honorable with the immigrants also, because we cannot force them to go to the country they don't want.
There's also a dimension related to how attractive member states are as a destination for refugees. And therefore, I think that seeing this only in East-West terms is a gross simplification.
Les migrants donnent parfois l'impression de choisir. Donc, un des arguments des pays de l'Est de l'Europe consiste à dire, mais ces migrants ne veulent pas venir chez nous. Ce qui n'est pas complètement faux.
So we had this difficult debate between the ones who thought they had already too many migrants, or the ones who said that they did not have any experience.
On a vu cette crispation. À un certain moment, j'ai mis tous les ministres autour de la table sont diplomates, et je leur ai dit, donnez-moi un nombre.
Il y a une première décision avec 40 000 personnes, dans un contexte où le Conseil européen avait dit qu'il fallait décider par consensus, qu'il n'y aurait pas de décision brutale à l'égard des États membres qui avaient des difficultés.
Pour la relocalisation, 40 000 à répartir, on était bloqué à 33 000. Voilà, c'était déjà un signal. Sur la base volontaire, pour moi en tout cas, on n'arrivera jamais à répartir plus de réfugiés.
So the summer came, and end of July, August, we had massive influx via the Greek islands, which meant that President Juncker, on the 9th of September, actually in his State of Union address, announced that we would come with a new relocation proposal of 120,000.
Il faut quand même partir du début du mois de septembre. Aylan, ce garçon de 5 ans, qui est mort, allongé mort sur la plage, c'était déjà fort. J'avais l'espoir, jusque peut-être quelques heures avant, la réunion qui était à 3 heures.
Okay, hi everyone. It's 9 o'clock, and this video that I'm showing that is an introduction to the immigration crisis relates to the reading for this week on Brexit and the breakup of the two unions, whether it be the United Kingdom or the European Union or both. Because one of the contributors to the success of the passage of the referendum vote to leave the European Union 4 years ago, over 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, in June 2016, was the fear or anxiety or resentment which the pro-Brexit forces led by Nigel Farage of the United Kingdom Independence Party manipulated or appealed to in order to get support, that all of these immigrants coming into the European Union seeking asylum, from hundreds of thousands, even over 1 million coming in, that they would eventually be able to come into Britain at some point, because by becoming permanent residents, maybe even eventually citizens of the European Union, they have the right of freedom of movement within the European Union as part of the single market, the 4 freedoms of the European community's single market, right? Free movement of goods, services, capital or finance, and people, labor. And this fear that Britain's economy was doing relatively well, had been doing relatively well for many years compared to the French economy or the Italian economy, that these immigrants would be coming to Britain, that they would be coming to Britain. And this, of course, I want to make sure that this is indeed sharing the screen, because sometimes I don't know if it's really working, but this was one of the most effective and controversial campaign posters that was used by this person, Nigel Farage, during the campaign. So you can see here the breaking point. The EU has failed us all, with this big line of immigrants coming in to the European Union, not coming into Britain. And of course, you can see most of them are clearly people who are coming from Asia and Africa. So of course, this was being highlighted as evidence of the implicit racism in the that was so important in the Brexit vote, in the Brexit campaign, that it was necessary to get Britain out of the European Union, because sooner or later, so many of these non-white immigrants would be coming to Britain to work in Britain. And yeah, the economy was doing well in Germany also, but most people don't study German in the rest of the world. Most people, if they study foreign languages, they're going to study English and maybe French. But and English, of course, is the language of the United Kingdom, and that economy is doing much better than France and has lower unemployment, more job opportunities. So these people would be eventually coming to Britain. And so the immigration crisis was one of, not the only, but one of the factors which contributed to the support for the Brexit vote to leave the European Union. And so before I forget, we should do the attendance, because I often do forget that. So we go to, let me see, move this out of the way here. Okay, go to Cyber Campus and go to United. I got to log in again, and log in and go to policymaking in the European Union and click on attendance and click on week 14 and smart attendance, and your lucky number is 585. 585 is your number. 585 for smart attendance. I feel like a lottery official, you know, drawing the number for today's lucky number. So today it's 585 is the attendance number for smart attendance. So, but back to the discussion of European Union and Brexit. And let me open up those notes for Chapter 10 Brexit. And again, it's saying stop share. So I want to screen share and go to the notes. And there you see the notes that I sent you and posted. Oh, before I forget also, because I will in our short class, you probably already know that you should sign up for a conference session with me for next week. In addition to having regular class online, we are also going to have conference sessions, because next week is the last week of the semester. So you're going to meet with me, and some of you have already been signing up. And Monday's going to be hectic, because I have to teach on Monday too. And then I'm going to meet with you individually on Zoom and to discuss your final exam first draft, which is due on Saturday, December 5th, Saturday, December 5th at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then I will work all day Saturday and Sunday to write comments on them and send them back to you. And then you will meet with me like we did with the midterm paper to discuss the paper. And then you will submit the draft of the final exam by the following Tuesday. So that would be what, December 15th, I think, would be when there's the due date for your the final exam to send it to me electronically. And some of you, of course, are also scheduled for debates this week and next week in this class, in the foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy class. So that's another reason why we're meeting on the regular class sessions, including on Friday, because some of you are also scheduled to debate on this Friday and so as well as this Friday, 5 days from today. So and as I said, I mean, this was announced a couple months ago that the university was ending on December 11. I think because many people are giving take-home final examinations rather than in-class final examinations. So we don't need to get together for an in-class final examination. So that's another reason not to risk groups that could spread the coronavirus. So so just to make sure, if you didn't do that, you will do that. Sign up for a conference session. And okay, so back to the notes okay, and it said stopping the share. So okay, if I hit resume share, I have to stop share and then redo the share for the notes again. Okay, so let me move my this bar out of the way so it's not obstructing what I need to show you here. So Brexit and the future of two unions, the European Union and the United Kingdom. And the UK, United Kingdom, I still remember, I always keep this in mind. I don't even know why, but in fourth grade, being taught by my fourth grade teacher that the official name of the United Kingdom is United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And so the UK held a referendum on 23 June 2016 and was asked the following question. The voters were asked to vote on the following question. Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? And voter turnout was high, 72%, over 72%. And the results were almost 52% voted to leave and 41 and 48% voted to stay. And this referendum was not legally binding. It was just a promise. This referendum that was held on June 23, 2016 was the result of Prime Minister David Cameron of the Conservative Party fulfilling his campaign promise from his 2015 successful political campaign to have a referendum if the Conservative Party won the National House of Commons elections in 2015 on whether or not Britain would stay in the European Union. And I think I mentioned in other classes, the result was that in 2015 United Kingdom elections, House of Commons elections, the Conservative Party did the best it had done in over 22 years. In almost 23 years, it got more seats in the House of Commons than it had in over 2 decades. It was the first time in over 20 years that the Conservative Party of Great Britain was able to form a government without forming a coalition with other political parties in the House of Commons, because they had done so well in the election of 2015. And as I said, in 2015, David Cameron, leading the Conservative Party, the Prime Minister at the time, said, if you vote for us, we will agree to have a referendum. We will have a referendum on whether or not Britain will stay in the European Union. So they did really, really well. And so he fulfilled his promise to have a referendum. And it was still decided by the House of Commons, or the United Kingdom Parliament, about whether or not Britain would leave the European Union. But even if this referendum was not itself legally binding, politically extremely difficult for any politician or government of any party in Great Britain to just ignore it. And I mention that because over the years, first off, this was surprising. This Brexit outcome vote was surprising to elite observers, maybe not to most, maybe not to all. Jean-Claude Juncker, the previous president of the European Commission, who I highlighted before as supposedly having a taste for wine, he says that he expected the British would vote to leave, that he wasn't surprised at the outcome of the election. But the media was, most faculty members, most professors were, David Cameron apparently was as well. He campaigned for Britain to stay in the European Union during the campaign leading up to this referendum. David Cameron of Great Britain. Let's see if I have the Brexit. Yes, here's the Wikipedia entry for Brexit. So let me again make sure that you can see that. And this is the Wikipedia entry for Brexit. And you know, it's a nice long entry for Brexit. And David Cameron was the prime minister, and he campaigned against leaving the European Union. But critics claim that his campaign was not very passionate, was not very intense, was lukewarm. And there's Nigel Farage, and there's Margaret Thatcher, who, in a sense, is the looming figure who inspired British nationalism when she became prime minister in the late 1970s. And you recall from that video clip on 1990 of her in YouTube insisting that Britain would never agree to a United States of Europe and would never give up the sovereignty of the House of Commons. And so she died a few years ago. But most people were, observers, I should say, not most people, most observers were surprised. And in terms of why the chapter that you're reading is called The Future of the Two Unions, has that label, is because, keep in mind, this book was published in 2018. Your textbook was published in 2018. So the writers are writing about a year after Brexit. And it wasn't really clear if Britain would leave the European Union. There were calls for redoing a referendum, having another referendum, disregarding the outcome of the referendum. And there still are calls ongoing to this very day of November 30, 2020. If you read the media and opinion writers, people writing opinions in, for example, The Guardian, the left of center newspaper, online newspaper out of Great Britain, that, with this terrible coronavirus economic emergency confronting Britain and the whole world, this is not the time to leave the European Union. This is not the time to seriously endanger Britain's relationships. Although Britain did formally leave the European Union 10 months ago, right? Or 9 months ago, at the end of January. But they're negotiating right now, as we speak, a new trade arrangement, a new set of trade framework treaty or agreement between United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. There's Northern Ireland, right? And there is Scotland, and there is England, and so you can see Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the European Union. Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the European Union, and Northern Ireland generally also voted to stay in the European Union, although not as strongly perhaps as in Scotland as a percent of the population. Presumably lots of the Protestants who are concentrated here voted with the English to leave the European Union. But this is part of the context that there had been, in terms of referendums, I already described the Brexit referendum in 2016. We talked about in previous class, the United Kingdom Commons elections in 2015, in which David Cameron promised that if he won the election, his party won the election, he would have a referendum. We mentioned that he was responding, and you can see how many seats he got, an increase of 24 seats in the House of Commons. big boost for Conservative Party. We talked about the 2014 European parliamentary elections in Great Britain. And you can see here that I'm looking for 2000 UK. Let's look for like this. That David Cameron was in part responding to the tremendous success in the 2014 European Parliament elections, in which UKIP party of Nigel Farage got the most votes of anyone, even though the turnout was relatively low. Still, from his perspective, he couldn't. David Cameron felt that he couldn't simply ignore this, that there had to be a response. But there had been another election in Britain prior, in Scotland, not in Britain, but in Scotland in 2014, Scottish independence referendum. Okay, and yeah, so let's see if we can find that here. And this was also in 2014, and this was held on September, and the Scottish voted 44 to 55%, 45 to 55, 44 to 56% to stay in the United Kingdom, to remain in the United Kingdom rather than leave the United Kingdom. It's unclear what leaving the United Kingdom would mean. I mean, would it be like the way Canada left the United Kingdom, which Canada is not in the British Empire, but still Queen Elizabeth of Britain is still technically the head of state of Canada. Same with Australia, all right? And the claim is that this referendum on leaving the United Kingdom and becoming their own separate state that would then join the European Union failed as a vote supported by Scottish nationalists because it failed because the assumption was that, of course, Britain would not leave the European Union. The point is, if the Scottish voters, these advocates for Scottish nationalism and independence argue, if Scottish voters had known that the United Kingdom was going to leave the European Union, the referendum would have passed. Scottish people don't want to leave, they claim, the European Union, do not want to leave the European Union. They want to stay in the European Union. So this was in September 2014. The Parliament elections were in European Parliament elections were in May of that same year, and then the 2015. See if I can find it here. General elections happened in May of that year as well, and so that's the context for this discussion about whether or not there's going to be potentially a breakup of the United Kingdom, because the Scottish nationalists, of course, are demanding that, things have changed. We didn't expect that Britain would ever leave the European Union. We want another referendum on whether or not Scotland should stay in the United Kingdom now that the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union, has left the European Union. So will that happen? Their English and British citizens are arguing and fighting about this now in the media, in the discourse. Of course, the current government of Boris Johnson dismisses this discussion as something which cannot be addressed right now because of this the crisis that Britain is confronting with the coronavirus and withdrawal from the European Union, and so he is the prime minister following after Theresa May, and Theresa May had been the prime minister who followed David Cameron. David Cameron resigned as a result of the outcome of the Brexit vote to leave the European Union, and she replaced him, and she tried to implement various kinds of agreements, negotiated various forms of agreements with the European Union that would keep Britain closely connected to the European Union, even though not a member of the European Union. And the most militant supporters of Brexit condemned her efforts because they claimed that the primary interest in leaving the European Union was to give Britain the freedom of maneuver, the wide decisional latitude, the policy option range of adopting free trade agreements with the United States and Canada and any country in the world, with India, without being restrained by its commitments to the European Union. And the European Union, of course, was demanding that, if Britain wanted to remain closely tied to the single market of the European Economic Community, there were limits on what Britain could do in terms of making trade agreements with everybody else, because if they have access to the British market, and the British market, it has free access to the European Union market, then that's not appropriate for the European Union to allow anyone to access the European Union through Britain when Britain does not have to adhere to European Union requirements. So that was one of the major sources of controversy, that she was negotiating European Union relationship with Great Britain, with the United Kingdom, in which United Kingdom would continue to cooperate very closely and coordinate very closely with the European Union in world trade negotiations and in economic policies. And for Brexit supporters, militant supporters, Brexit leaders, that was unacceptable. And also other issues, as I mentioned, were also what to do with Northern Ireland and the role of the European Union connection between the Republic of Ireland and what happens with Northern Ireland if it leaves with the rest of the United Kingdom, the European Union, and with the require the reimposition of new border controls, tariff and border controls between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which then would encourage hostility from Irish nationalists who, as one media report noted, would view those new customs border posts and outposts and toll booths and roads as magnets for terrorist attack, as occurred during the Troubles in between the Irish nationalists, tend to be Catholic, and the Irish Protestants, who tend to be British, identify as British nationalists, would restart if there was a new hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, a new hard border. And as I told you, today there is no physical evidence of a border there at all between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. There's no signs, nothing. The only indication that there's a different country when you cross is that the speed limit road signs on the roads in terms of how fast you're allowed to drive your car are in kilometers per hour, and here they're in miles per hour. So and we still don't know the outcome of what these negotiations will be regarding what will be the relationship between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland now that in relationship to the single market of the European Union. So that's the reason why this chapter is labeled, why it's called The Future of Two Unions, that what's going to happen with the European Union, but also what's going to happen with the United Kingdom, the union of the kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland, or what's left of Ireland, Northern Ireland. So, to most observers, the outcome was a shock. Even Nigel Farage, I remember as the votes were being counted, Nigel Farage, the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, announced in the middle of the night that they had lost, that his party's efforts to have Brexit be adopted had failed. And then as the hours passed, he was shocked, like the rest of the world, most of the world, to learn that in fact it did pass. And why? Why were people shocked? Again, it's a theme I've come to in other classes. You know, people who are highly attentive to politics, like you and me, and many people are a minority. We are a minority among the population of our countries. And so who do we talk to? Who do you and I tend to spend our time communicating with? We tend to talk to each other. And so it's human nature for us generally just to assume that most humans are like who we are, who we deal with on a day-to-day routine. And that's not true. Most people do not pay close attention to politics. Most people still feel strongly emotional about their identities as Americans or French or Koreans or British. And among those lower attention level people, nationalism will be stronger. Nationalism, British nationalism, or Italian nationalism, or Greek nationalism, or Bulgarian nationalism, that will tend to be stronger among the non-elite, among the lower socioeconomic classes with less education, more fear and insecurity about their well-being in a world of globalization, in which, you know, if you don't have a college degree and speak foreign languages, your career prospects are not so bright anymore. Those people are more likely to be nationalistic and to be concerned about Britain's sovereignty or Italy's sovereignty or France's sovereignty. So immediate effects, they concern that other European Union member states might also have similar referendums. So that's another reason why, as I noted previously, since 2009, the European Union has not really had any more referendums since the 2016 British referendum, because the mass of the population can be rallied among nationalist concerns if at the time prior to a political campaign, let us say, people might not focus or care much about European issues and European integration. There are always political entrepreneurs, French Donald Trumps or German Donald Trumps, who will attempt to mobilize and motivate people by playing with their fears. I mean, I remember before you were born, right? Most of you, back in the early 1990s, when the European Union was being formed out of the European community, when the war in Yugoslavia was happening, and the French had to have a referendum, according to their constitutional court. France had to have a referendum vote on whether or not to approve the Maastricht Treaty, the Treaty of Maastricht that created officially the European Union and committed Europe to economic and monetary union eventually. And at the start of the political campaign in France, at this time, I think it was in 1991 or 1992, I can't remember. I remember the public opinion polls said that 70% of French people asked in a public opinion survey polls said, yes, we approve of, you know, the Treaty of Maastricht. Yes, 70% of those responding said yes. And then as the weeks passed, as the political campaign continued, as political entrepreneurs, French Donald Trumps emerged and mobilized people around fear and anxiety about the meaning of European integration and France's impact on France from European integration, the referendum to approve the Maastricht Treaty barely passed by like 51%. Less than 51% of voters in the French referendum approved the Maastricht Treaty. So they went from 70% public opinion support to almost failing by the time the referendum happened. I think it should be here somewhere, if I can find it here on Wikipedia. See, French referendum, a Maastricht Treaty. It should pop up here on and let me go, and I gotta go back to sharing the screen with you. Share screen, and so you can see, yeah, here, yeah, everything's got a Wikipedia entry. The 1992 French Maastricht referendum, and it passed, only 51% of the voters voted for it. Right, so no more referendums. No more referendums. And of course, the French did vote down the Constitution Treaty in 2004. In 2004, they voted down the Constitution Treaty along with the Dutch referendum voters. Yeah, see if we can find that. French EU Constitution referendum. Yeah, oh, it was 2005, it says here. and it resulted in a no vote in 2005, with 55% of voters rejecting the treaty on a turnout of 69%. And keep in mind, right, France and Britain and Franco-German, not France and Britain, Franco-German cooperation, French and German cooperation is considered to be the engine of European integration. And you can't take for granted that the French public actually supports European integration when you get results like this. Okay, so back to the notes, and let me see, I have some other things prepared here. I want to do a lesson, I want to do an exercise, right, at some point. And so, but before we go to that, I want to continue on with the notes, and as I find, I want to make sure that you're able to see what I'm able to see here. So I have to go back to the notes here, and okay, share screen. All right, so that's not the one I want. Some other stuff. Okay, so so yes, there's always this concern, and keep in mind, the European Union is a project that's led by the European Union elite, according to that constructivist perspective. Remember, we talked about constructivism and neo-functionalism and policy analysis, network analysis, and liberal intergovernmentalism. Constructivists always emphasize that the European Union is a project that's driven by an idea that elites share. That's one of the primary motivating drives behind European integration. It's not something that the mass of the population necessarily support, except for maybe perhaps Germany. But even in Germany, it's coming under challenge from Eurosceptic parties. So, but in response to the Brexit election, Brexit referendum in Britain in 2016, there were national elections in European states, and they produced pro-EU governments in France, Germany, and the Netherlands. In the UK, Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to stay in the European Union, raising serious constitutional issues. Yeah, why did the Scots and the Northern Irish want to stay in the European Union? Partly, it probably differs between the two areas, right? Insofar as, for example, people who want peace in Northern Ireland understand that Northern Ireland's integration with the rest of the European Union is one critical factor for explaining, one of a number, but one certainly necessary critical factor for explaining the end of the relative end of the violence in Ireland. And the Scots have become more conscious of their national identity, and being part of the European Union was providing them with more opportunities to assert their identity as a small country. I mean, there's only 4.5 million people live in Scotland. It's a small population. The population of Great Britain is overwhelmingly England, but there are about 4 million people that live in Scotland. And so being in the European Union was seen as a source of protection for Scottish identity, and even promoting opportunities for Scotland to assert its identity. And this is even before Britain voted to leave the European Union in 2016. The outcome of the Brexit referendum ended the Prime Minister career of David Cameron. He went from being one of the greatest leaders of the British Conservative Party by delivering them a tremendous outcome in 2015 to being targeted with derision by at least much of the media, if not by the population of Britain, by much of the elite media, that this was a disaster, David Cameron, what have you done? And so on and so on. But you know, again, from his perspective, he had to do something to respond to the United Kingdom Independence Party challenge, that sooner or later, the United Kingdom Independence Party, Nigel Farage's party, was going to win seats in the House of Commons in England itself, in Britain itself, which it has never done, and which he did not want to permit it to do, to ever succeed in actually winning House of Commons elections in Great Britain itself, which, as I told you, right, and everybody could see in 2014 European Union Parliament elections, the United Kingdom Independence Party of Nigel Farage got more votes than the British Labour or Conservative parties. And so this highlights what I've already been describing here. Cameron announced his resignation the day after the referendum, and Theresa May replaced him, and she focused on Brexit. And that's where the book pretty much ends, right? The book is focused on the writers, the authors of the textbook are writing at a time when Theresa May is still trying to negotiate her plans for a new relationship between Britain and between the United Kingdom and the European Union, which were then rejected by the British Conservative Party and led to her fall, her resignation, and the rise of Boris Johnson, who is now the Prime Minister of the Conservative Party. And as we said, that Britain formally left the European Union, took its members out of the European Parliament, and its commissioner left the European Commission, and then the world turned upside down with the coronavirus pandemic. Johnson was promising a hard Brexit. In other words, that Britain would just simply leave the European Union and be completely independent from the European Union, except insofar as the World Trade Organization rules would apply. So Britain would have the same relationship with the European Union as India or Russia in terms of tariffs and trade barriers, which are significant. I mean, they're not zero, they're significant. And that's what the meaning of a hard Brexit, that there would be no agreement, and the United Kingdom would be no different than, say, the United States in terms of its relationship and trade with the European Union. And that would allow for greater British freedom of independence, freedom of autonomy, and autonomy in negotiating new FTAs with other countries in the world. But that's not likely to happen because, as we said, almost half of British trade still is with the continent of Europe. Almost half. I see estimates 45 to 50% of the trade of Britain, international trade of Britain, is with France, Germany, Italy, the continent of the European Union. So for United Kingdom to take the penalties on trade, which would also have a cost to the Europeans, because obviously they're integrated with the British economy as well, that they would pay a high price if there was a hard Brexit. So we're waiting to see what the results are. I mean, if you read the media, they're attempting to bargain, negotiate with each other, using bargaining leverage against each other. I mean, the European Union itself would suffer economically from putting high tariff barriers with the United Kingdom, or I should say World Trade Organization tariff levels with the United Kingdom. A lot of companies in European Union would suffer, but what kind of restrictions the British will accept, we're waiting to see. We don't know. Supposedly negotiations are focused heavily on a number of issues, including over French and European access to fishing grounds for fishing off the British coast. So Theresa May had emphasized the need of making sure that Britain stayed in good terms with the European Union in order to maintain peace in Northern Ireland, right? In which she had negotiated a so-called backstop in which Northern Ireland will remain part of the European Union single market and customs union for some period of time, and thereby binding the United Kingdom to even as it leaves the European Parliament, the Commission, the Council, with a future relationship that would be negotiated after Brexit in a transition period of undetermined length. So this has been another source of anger and hostility among British nationalists. When we talked about nationalism, a nationalist is someone who thinks that their nation must be sovereign. And how they understand sovereign depends upon the context, but this is viewed by them, this requirement that there must be restrictions on what Britain can do with regard to trading with the rest of the world if Northern Ireland is going to maintain complete access to the rest of Ireland through the European single market is to be maintained. They find to be a source of great contention and hostility and inability to think clearly. I mean, you know, I'm 58 years old. I was in school. I was in what, in 1970, I was in the second or third grade when the violence began in earnest, right? And then when I was in the early 1970s, I went to middle school, and I remember on the television, on the news media, reading reports about violence in Ireland all the time. There were reports of bombings, killings, and this went on and on and on for years and years. There was an attempt to kill Margaret Thatcher that almost succeeded, to assassinate her by the Irish Republican Army in the 1980s. Bombs were blown up we highlighted in Birmingham, in London. People were killed, not just in Ireland, they were being killed in Britain. And then finally in 1998, on Good Friday, around Easter, the 1998 Good Friday Agreement was reached, which pretty much brought an end finally to the violence in Northern Ireland. And part of an explanation for that success has to include European integration, for easing concerns about Irish sovereignty and that Irish Catholics in Northern Ireland are dominated by the British, because we're all part of the European Union, and you know, we can go back and forth across the border. So I feel European now, and so I don't feel so much that I'm oppressed by the British because we're European. Now people are being pushed to make a choice. So even as we talk here right now, this is a major focus of contention. We don't know what Johnson and the Conservative Party are negotiating with the British, but it's just hard to believe, as an outsider, me watching what's going on in Britain, that these British nationalists are they just willfully perceiving a world that is in a self-serving way, in which they just deny that there is this problem anymore with Irish violence in Northern Ireland. That the Irish nationalism is no longer an issue, that they don't have to worry about going back to the Troubles. Remember the Troubles? I mean, it was an issue from the entire time that I became politically aware until 1998. When I was in Bulgaria, teaching at the American University of Bulgaria, this was a continual issue for decades and decades and decades. And they're really going to risk undermining all of that through reinstituting a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland? And if they're not going to have a hard border, what kind of border are they going to have? And if they're not going to have a border, well, then that means people can still get access to the British market through Northern Ireland, because it's part of the United Kingdom. And similarly, British exporters can export to Ireland and the rest of the European Union from Northern Ireland into Ireland if there's no border. Even if Britain is subsidizing its biotech and its artificial intelligence industries to an excessive degree as the European. So we don't know. We're still watching, waiting, and reading the news reports about what are they negotiating here. And the Scottish nationalists are watching and continue to press that we want another referendum, we want another vote, we want another Scottish independence vote, we want another referendum on Scottish independence. We demand it because we want Scotland to join the European Union, to stay in the European Union. And Boris Johnson says no. Meanwhile, of course, we're going to the worst economic depression in modern history in these countries with the coronavirus. Yeah, so this backstop and transition period infuriates the hard Brexiters because they fear, in effect, that the United Kingdom will never really leave the European Union, while it will be subject to European Union laws without having a formal say in negotiating them. Like, you know, Norway or Liechtenstein or Switzerland, they're not in the European Union, but they pretty much have to follow European Union laws, not completely, but pretty much they do, even though they don't have a formal voice in making those European Union laws, because they're so tightly integrated economically with their European Union, Norway, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. So, as I said, we do not know what's going to happen. Boris Johnson had another election in late 2019, and he did really, really well. I mean, let's see. I mean, let's look at the Wikipedia entry here. And so, screen share. Two 2019 British UK parliamentary elections. And 2019 European Union United Kingdom general election. Again, he got 48 more seats in the December 12th, 2019, not even a year ago. The British Conservative Party, under his leadership, got 48 more seats, gained 48 more seats from the previous parliament that David Cameron had won. And that settled it, that Brexit is a done deal, right? And that's what he campaigned on, that get Brexit done, get Brexit done, get Brexit done. And so he campaigned and won 48 more additional seats from the previous House of Commons. And, you know, Britain left in the end of January of this year, the European Union, and then the pandemic exploded. So we just have a minute left, and just so we get some participation here, let me open up that exercise. And Brexit Northern Ireland. So stop share, and then we screen share. Get it there. So and so this is from a little over a year ago. Boris Johnson has been negotiating with the European Union, and he, again, what to do about Northern Ireland. That's one of the key issues here. Jim Allister, the leader of the traditional Unionist Voice Party, dismissed Unionist means union with Britons, maintaining Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom, dismissed that New Deal as disastrous, saying it would set back Northern Ireland's economy as the rest of the United Kingdom moves on and thrives outside the European Union. Again, one of the themes in this class is social psychology and the tendency of people to see a world, perceive the reality around them in a way that makes them or allows them to feel good about doing whatever it is they want to do. I want Britain out of the European Union. But what about the economic costs? Britain will thrive if it is no longer chained by the European Union. It will thrive because we'll have independence and freedom of action to make FTAs with the United States under Trump and Modi in India. It will thrive the way Croat nationalists thought, if we break away from Yugoslavia, we will thrive because we will control all of the lucrative tourist business along the Adriatic coast. So he is committed, this person who really wants to leave the European Union, that it will be good for Britain. Oh yeah, well, there'll be a short-term cost, but in the long term, we will benefit. The unescapable reality is that a permanent regulatory and customs border cutting us off from Great Britain. There was talk about they would put a customs border before that the Northern Ireland would be part of de facto Ireland economic space, economic market, and there would be a customs border between Northern Ireland and the rest of Great Britain, between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Even though Northern Ireland would still be part of the United Kingdom, there would be a de facto customs border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And some nationalists who want to reunify Ireland think this is great. Brexit will eventually lead to a political dynamic that will cause eventually Northern Ireland to reunify with Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and Ireland will again be unified. So, and so my question to you as the last action that we have here is to vote on this topic. Respond to the following. statement. Brexit will encourage the eventual reunification of Northern Ireland under Dublin's control. Please vote. Thirty seconds. 20 seconds. Five seconds. Okay, and there you see the results. A lot of you think it might happen. Some of you think it won't. Some of you are not so certain. Okay, well, that's it for today. And we will end the class, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye.